400 men, 40 years, one lie that killed them all. The United States government told these men they were getting treated, but here's what they were actually doing: watching them die, slowly, painfully, on purpose. And the worst part, you've probably never heard the full story. What I'm about to tell you isn't some conspiracy theory. It's not fiction. It's one of the most shameful chapters in American medical history. A 40-year government experiment that betrayed, tortured, and killed hundreds of black men, all in the name of science. This is the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this story changed medicine forever and why its shadow still haunts us today. Let's go back to 1932. Picture this: Macon County, Alabama. The Great Depression is crushing America, but for black sharecroppers in this corner of the Deep South, life was already a living hell. These weren't just poor people. These were men trapped in a system designed to keep them enslaved in everything but name. They rented tiny plots of land from white plantation owners, borrowed money for seeds and tools, and after harvest, somehow always ended up deeper in debt. They earned 9 to 48 cents a day. Most couldn't read or write. The state of Alabama spent $65 per year on white students' education and less than $7 on black students. And here's the kicker: 360 out of every 1,000 black men in Macon County, Alabama had syphilis. That's over the third of the entire population. Can you imagine that? Now, in 1929, something happened that gave people hope. The Julius Rosenwald Fund, a philanthropic organization, launched a study to measure how bad the syphilis problem really was in the South. The plan was simple: Year 1, test everyone. Year 2, treat everyone. Finally, these forgotten men were going to get help. But then the Great Depression hit harder. The funding dried up. The treatment phase, it never happened. And that's when the U.S. Public Health Service stepped in with a very different plan. Because what happened next wasn't about helping these men, it was about watching them die. Meet Dr. Taliaferro Clark, director of the Venereal Disease Division of the Public Health Service, and the man whose brilliant idea would destroy hundreds of lives. See, back in Scandinavia, there'd been a study on how untreated syphilis progressed in white Nordic men. Dr. Clark looked at all those infected black men in Macon County and thought, what an unparalleled opportunity. His words, not mine. But here's what made this truly evil. Clark didn't just want to study syphilis. He wanted to prove that black men were fundamentally biologically different from white men. He believed black men had what he called irresistible furor sexualis, basically uncontrollable sexual urges, and deficient cranial capacity. Translation: he thought black people had smaller brains and couldn't control themselves. Clark theorized that because black men were less neurologically sophisticated, syphilis would attack their hearts and blood vessels instead of their brains. He wanted to prove this by studying the disease in men who would never, ever be treated. Think about what that means. These weren't patients to him. These weren't even really human beings. One doctor literally wrote that the men had no more interest for us until they were dead. They were waiting for them to die. That was the point, the whole point. Oh, and there was a second reason for the study that most people don't know about. A commercial one. In the 1930s, there was no reliable test for syphilis. Laws required testing before marriage, before joining the military. There was huge demand. And the bacteria that causes syphilis, Treponema pallidum, it's incredibly fragile, couldn't be grown in labs back then. So they needed a constant supply of fresh blood from infected people. During the Tuskegee Study, 2 new syphilis tests were developed and successfully marketed using blood from these men. The men were never told, never compensated. They were human culture mediums. But how do you get 600 men to volunteer for a study designed to watch them die? Simple. You lie. In 1932, the Public Health Service sent letters to black churches all over Macon County. The message was clear. Remember that treatment program you were promised? It's finally here. Free medical care from the government for anyone with bad blood. Now, bad blood wasn't a medical term. It was a catch-all phrase people used for anemia, fatigue, indigestion, and venereal diseases. So if you felt tired, run down, sick, you had bad blood, and treatment was finally coming. About 600 men came forward. They were the lucky ones, or so everyone thought. They'd been selected for free health care from the most powerful government on earth. They were divided into two groups, 399 with syphilis, 201 without it as controls. But here's what they weren't told.
They weren't told they had syphilis. They weren't told what the study was really about. They weren't told they'd never receive actual treatment. They were promised free medical exams, free meals, transportation, and burial insurance if they died. For men who had absolutely nothing, this seemed like a miracle. Can you understand what it's like to have so little that free burial insurance feels like winning the lottery? The study was run out of Tuskegee Institute, now Tuskegee University, a historically black college founded by Booker T. Washington. The school was told this was important research that would bring prestige in federal funding. They were used too. And there was a black nurse named Eunice Rivers who served as the go-between. A lot has been written about her role. Some called her complicit. Others say she was just following orders in an era when nurses, especially black women nurses, had zero power to question white male doctors. The truth? Probably somewhere in between. The deception went deep, really deep. The men were given regular checkups. They had their blood drawn constantly, and they underwent spinal taps, painful procedures where a needle goes into your spine to extract fluid. But the men were told these were spinal shots, special free treatments. They were told the pain they felt was medicine working. Look at this actual letter sent to the men by the Macon County Health Department. You will now be given your last chance to get a second examination. This is a very special one, and after it is finished, you will be given a special treatment if it is believed you are in a condition to stand it. And at the bottom, remember, this is your last chance for special free treatment. Every single word was a lie. They were given pink medicine that they faithfully took, believing it was curing them. It was aspirin, literal aspirin. Now you might be thinking, okay, but this was the 1930s. Maybe treatment for syphilis wasn't even that good back then. And you'd be partially right. At the start of the study, treatment involved toxic compounds of arsenic, mercury, and bismuth. Not great, but it reduced suffering and deaths. Here's the thing though. The researchers gave the men a small dose of this treatment at the very beginning, which actually ruined the whole untreated syphilis premise of their study. Then they stopped. So it was bad science and evil. But wait, because it gets so much worse. 1928. Alexander Fleming discovers penicillin. 1942. Penicillin is successfully used to treat survivors of the Coconut Grove nightclub fire. 1945. Penicillin becomes the standard, highly effective treatment for syphilis. The Tuskegee Study continued until 1972.
For 25 years, a quarter century, there was a cure, an actual cure, and these men were systematically denied it. When World War II started, about 250 of the men registered for the draft. The military tested them, found they had syphilis, and ordered them to be treated. This should have ended the experiment, right? Wrong. The Assistant Surgeon General of the United States personally intervened. He provided the Selective Service Board with a list of all the study participants, and they were exempted from the draft specifically to keep the study going. Think about that. The government protected them from military service not to help them, but to ensure they stayed sick, to ensure they could keep watching them deteriorate. Every single doctor in Macon County was given the names of the men in the study and explicitly told, do not treat them. If one of these men showed up at a clinic, desperately ill, begging for help, they were turned away. Under government orders. For 40 years this continued. 40 years. And here's one of the most disturbing parts of this entire story. It wasn't a secret. The first report was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 1936. Then papers were published every 4 to 6 years until 1973. 15 articles in respected medical journals for nearly 4 decades. Thousands of doctors around the world read detailed descriptions of men suffering from untreated syphilis while effective treatments existed. Not one published a letter of criticism. Not one. In 1969, a committee from the Centers for Disease Control reviewed the study and decided it should continue. Local chapters of the American Medical Association agreed. So what finally ended it? One man, one conscience, one whistleblower. Peter Buxton, a 29-year-old social worker from Czechoslovakia working for the Public Health Service, interviewing patients with venereal diseases. In his first year on the job, he learned about the Tuskegee Study, and he was horrified. Buxton wrote to his superiors expressing grave moral concerns. He pushed back, he questioned, he refused to be silent. The response? A blue ribbon panel of 17 non-government medical experts reviewed the study and decided it should continue. Can you imagine being Buxton? Seeing this evil, reporting it through proper channels, and being told by the experts that you're wrong. Most people would have given up. Buxton didn't. For years, he kept pushing, kept writing letters, kept being ignored. Until 1972, when he took his evidence to the Associated Press journalist. July 26, 1972. The story hit the front page of the New York Times. America awoke to learn that its government had been conducting a slow-motion murder disguised as science for 4 decades. The backlash was immediate. Comparisons to Nazi medical experiments, congressional hearings led by Senator Edward Kennedy. National outrage. But the damage was done. By the time the study ended, 128 men had died, 28 directly from syphilis, 100 from related complications. 40 of their wives had been infected, 19 of their children were born with congenital syphilis. 19 children born with a disease their fathers could have been cured of decades earlier. Attorney Fred Gray filed a class action lawsuit. The settlement was $10 million, about $50 million in today's money. Survivors and families got medical care, financial compensation. But as one victim's son, Albert Jokes, said, "People think it's the scourge of the earth to have syphilis in your family. The stigma, the shame, the lost trust, that can't be compensated." But wait, because somehow there's an even darker chapter to this story. In 2010, researchers uncovered documents that revealed something shocking. While the Tuskegee study was ongoing, the same Public Health Service researchers were conducting another experiment, this time in Guatemala. And this one was even worse. Dr. John Cutler, who would later become a lead researcher in the Tuskegee experiments, led a team to Guatemala City in 1946. Their goal? Test penicillin's effectiveness against syphilis and gonorrhea. Their method? Deliberately infect people. They started by paying prostitutes infected with syphilis to have sex with prisoners. When that didn't work efficiently enough, they moved to psychiatric patients, orphans, children. They would inoculate people directly, putting bacteria into their bodies without consent. The investigator notebooks contain vivid, disturbing details. When women didn't get infected through normal methods, doctors described taking cotton swabs soaked in gonorrhea pus and inserting them into women's cervixes, swabbing around with considerable vigor. Over 1,300 people were intentionally exposed. 61 to 87% showed signs of disease. There was a psychiatric patient named Berta. When syphilis injected into her arm only caused bumps, Dr. Cutler put gonorrhea from a male patient into her eyes, urethra, and rectum. 4 days later, Berta died. She was just one of many. And Dr. Cutler wasn't some rogue scientist. The principal investigator, Dr. John Mahoney, was the preeminent physician-scientist of his day, recent winner of the Lasker Award. He knew everything, encouraged everything. In letters, he wrote to Cutler, "Your show is already attracting rather wide and favorable attention up here." Another researcher wrote about a conversation with the Surgeon General, who said, and this is a direct quote, "We couldn't do such an experiment in this country." They knew it was wrong. They just didn't care, as long as it wasn't on American soil. In 2010, President Barack Obama formally apologized for the Guatemala experiments. But the researchers, the doctors, the government officials who knew, none of them were ever prosecuted. Not for Guatemala, not for Tuskegee, not one. So what did we learn from all this horror? The Tuskegee study didn't just end, it exploded into the national consciousness and forced America to confront a question we'd been avoiding. How do we stop this from ever happening again? In 1973, Congress held hearings. In 1974, they passed the National Research Act, establishing what we now know as Institutional Review Boards, IRBs, and the principle of informed consent. The Belmont Report emerged, laying out 3 core principles for ethical research. 1. Respect for persons. Informed consent is mandatory. 2. Beneficence. Research must benefit participants, not just use them. 3. Justice. The most vulnerable shouldn't bear the burden of research. These seem obvious now, right? Common sense? But they weren't always law. They became law because of Tuskegee. Every time you sign a consent form at a doctor's office, every time a researcher explains a study in detail, every ethics board that reviews research proposals, that's Tuskegee's legacy. But there's a darker legacy too. Trust, or rather, the complete breakdown of trust between Black Americans and the medical establishment. In 1990, researchers asked Black Americans if they thought HIV/AIDS was a genocidal plot. 10% said yes, 20% said they weren't sure. That's 30% of Black Americans who thought their government might be trying to kill them with a disease. And you know what? After Tuskegee, after Guatemala, after centuries of medical exploitation, can you really blame them for thinking that? Studies have shown that the disclosure of Tuskegee in 1972 led to decreased health-seeking behavior among Black men, lower life expectancy, increased medical mistrust, reduced participation in clinical trials. And here's the tragic irony. When Black Americans avoid medical care and research because of justified mistrust, it creates gaps in our understanding of how diseases affect different populations, which leads to worse health outcomes. The harm compounds across generations. One of the Tuskegee victims' sons said, "People think it's the scourge of the earth to have this in your family. The shame, the stigma, that's generational trauma. And it didn't have to happen." But there's something else we need to talk about, something that makes this even more relevant today. Here's what haunts me about Tuskegee. These weren't monsters. They were respected doctors, surgeons general, recipients of prestigious awards, men who did enormous good in other parts of their careers. Dr. Thomas Parran was Surgeon General from 1936 to 1948. He launched vigorous campaigns to eradicate venereal disease using mass screening and mobile treatment clinics. He created the NIH Extramural Grants Program. He was on the cover of Time magazine. He also made sure the men in Tuskegee weren't treated. These were smart people, educated people, people who took an oath to do no harm. So what happened? Rationalization, institutional constraints, the banality of evil. One person had an idea, others went along with it, it became normal. Then it became policy. Then it became, we've come this far, we might as well finish. And maybe they convinced themselves it was for the greater good, that the knowledge gained would help millions. But here's the thing about that rationalization. The study was scientifically worthless. They contaminated it from the start by giving initial treatment. They mixed test and control groups. The data was unreliable. So these men suffered for nothing, died for nothing. Their pain had no purpose except to satisfy the curiosity of researchers who saw them as less than human. And that's what keeps me up at night, because I look at history and I ask myself, could I have been Peter Buxton, the one person in 40 years who stood up and said, this is wrong? Or would I have been one of the thousands of doctors who read those journal articles and said nothing? One of the nurses following orders, one of the administrators protecting institutional funding? Would you have spoken up? It's easy to think we would. It's comforting to place ourselves on the side of the angels when we look back. But only one Peter Buxton existed in 40 years, and he wasn't even a doctor. He was a 29-year-old social worker with far less education than the surgeons general and CDC directors who knew about the study, which tells us something crucial. Moral courage isn't about education. It's not about intelligence. It's about character, conscience, the willingness to see other people, all people, as fully human. So where do we go from here? May 16, 1997, the White House. President Bill Clinton stood before 8 surviving participants of the Tuskegee Study, including a man named Howard Shaw, plus representatives of others who had died. Clinton said, the United States government did something that was wrong, deeply, profoundly, morally wrong. It was an outrage to our commitment to integrity and equality for all our citizens. To the survivors, to the wives and family members, the children and grandchildren, I say what you know. No power on earth can give you back the lives lost, the pain suffered, the years of internal torment and anguish. What was done cannot be undone, but we can end the silence. We can stop turning our heads away. What the United States government did was shameful, and I am sorry. An apology, finally, 25 years after the study ended, 65 years after it began. Better late than never? Maybe, but it doesn't bring anyone back. As part of the apology, Clinton announced funding for the National Center for Bioethics in Research and Healthcare at Tuskegee University. From horror, something constructive, a place to study ethics, to teach the next generation, to make sure this never happens again. Today, medical students learn about Tuskegee. Ethics boards reference it. It's become the cautionary tale that shaped modern biomedical research. And that's important, but it's not enough, because the systems that allowed Tuskegee to happen, racism, the devaluation of certain lives, unchecked institutional power, the worship of scientific progress above human dignity, those systems still exist. They look different now, they're more subtle, but they're there. And the question we have to ask ourselves every single day is, what are we turning a blind eye to right now? What will future generations look back on with horror and ask, how could they let that happen? Here's what I want you to take away from this. The Tuskegee experiment lasted 40 years. 15 scientific papers were published. Thousands of doctors knew. Government agencies approved it. Prestigious institutions participated. And only one person stood up and said no. One. These men, these 600 black men from Macon County, Alabama, they were fathers, brothers, sons, human beings with hopes, fears, loves, and dreams. They trusted their government. They believed in the goodness of doctors. They thought they were being helped, and they were betrayed in the most fundamental way possible. So yes, we need ethics boards and informed consent laws and oversight committees. But more than that, we need moral courage. We need people willing to speak up when they see wrong, even when everyone around them is silent, even when it costs them something. We need to remember that following orders is never an excuse, that everyone else is doing it doesn't make something right. We need to see every human being, every single person, regardless of race, class, education, or power, as deserving of dignity, respect, and care. The men of Tuskegee deserved that. They never got it. But we can honor their memory by making sure it never happens again. Not to anyone, not anywhere, not ever. Remember their names. Remember their suffering. Remember that science without ethics is just cruelty with a clipboard. And the next time you see injustice, even small injustice, ask yourself, am I going to be Peter Bruxton, or am I going to be one of the thousands who stayed silent? Because history is watching, and the choice is yours. If this story affected you the way it affected me, do me a favor. Share this video, not for me, for them. For the men whose names most people will never know, for their families who still carry this pain. The more people who know this story, the harder it becomes to repeat it. Drop a comment telling me what you think, what questions you have, how this made you feel. And if you want to learn more about medical ethics, the fight for justice, and the stories that shaped our world, subscribe, because I'm not done telling these stories. Thanks for watching. Thanks for caring, and never forget Tuskegee.